So today I want to talk about a little bit about what is happening in Russia and Ukraine today. A series of events have taken place that it appears that they are going to be going to war. Um, just to give you a background in case you have forgotten. After the fall of the Soviet Union, um, Ukraine agreed to stay in the Russian sphere of influence, and the reason is uh, the only thing that Ukraine had besides farming was Russia's nuclear technology. And a lot of the folks who were employed in Ukraine while they were under the Soviet Union, their jobs were in the nuclear field, and which is why you can see what happened with the Chernobyl meltdown. It happened in Ukraine. That's where a lot of Russia's nuclear um, technology was done in Ukraine. And other than that, Ukraine didn't have much except for farming. So they stayed in the Russian sphere of influence. Now, there is an argument going on between Russia and NATO, and that is concerning after the fall of the Soviet Union. James Baker, the Secretary of State at the time, I believe he was Secretary of State, he had a talk with both Boris Yeltsin and the man who came before him when this thing all came crashing down. I can't remember the guy's name. He was the premier of the Soviet Union when the Soviet Union fell. There is a disagreement on what was agreed upon. One man says that NATO agreed that they would not step one more inch towards the Russian sphere of influence. Another man says that's not true. I'm not going to say which man says what, but among these three men, there is a discrepancy, there is a disagreement upon what was agreed upon. And so NATO, instead of remaining in place, instead of abiding by their original agreement concerning if one is attacked, then they all are attacked, and they all will join in to defend the one who is attacked. That's what the whole purpose of NATO was all about. But NATO started expanding. You had, not necessarily in this order, you had Poland joining NATO. Some of the satellite nations around Russia started joining NATO. I don't know when Turkey joined NATO, but Turkey really doesn't have anything to do with that. And then what happened was NATO started building bases around Russia closer and closer and closer and closer and closer. And then Europe wanted Ukraine to join the EU, if I remember correctly. And then there came an election in the Ukraine. And I'm not sure if I have an article here or not concerning this election. The Orange Revolution, when the Orange Revolution began. Really? Give me a second here. All right, I'll put this back. Presidential election of 2004 brought Ukraine to the brink of disintegration and civil war. Cleared to seek a third term as president by the Constitutional Court, Kuchma instead endorsed the candidacy of Prime Minister Viktor Yanukovych. Now, those of you remember Viktor Yanukovych, he was the pro-Russian sphere of influence side. And then there was, and Yanukovych's stronghold of Donetsk, however you say that. And on the other side was Lukashenko. And Lukashenko, he had suffered from dioxin poisoning, allegedly carried out by the Ukrainian State Secret Service, which left his face disfigured. And of course you see what happens. In the first round of the presidential election on October 31st, Lukashenko and Yanukovych both won about 2/5 of the vote. In the runoff the following month, Yanukovych was declared the winner, though Lukashenko supporters charged fraud and staged mass protests that became known as the Orange Revolution. Protesters clad in orange, Lukashenko's campaign color. You guys know what happened after this. Then you had the Donbass region eventually deciding that they did not want to join the EU, instead they wanted to stay with the Russian sphere of influence. It would take me all day to read everything that I want to talk to you about today, but ultimately, this is what led to the situation in where Russia took Crimea. You have the Maiden protest movement, and on it went. So as you know by now, Russia took Crimea. And the Donbass region refuses to stay with Ukraine as Ukraine joins the EU sphere of influence. And they had a treaty. And apparently this treaty has expired on March the 31st. Now, I saw an article a couple of days ago, and I actually was kind of relieved because, I don't like war. I put war off as long as possible. By the Ukrainian Secretary of Defense, Foreign Minister, whatever his title is, announcing that they plan on taking the Donbass region back on May the 2nd, which is the day of Orthodox Easter. And then I read that the Russians were thinking, well, why wait? Why not do this now? And what they did was they started bringing in pontoon boats. Why pontoon boats? Well, here's the thing. In that particular region, the land is frozen, but on top, things are thawing, and it's a mess. It's a muddy, muddy, muddy mess. So bringing in all these tanks and armored vehicles and everything like that to start a war in that particular area would be an awful mess, unless, of course, they had some sort of pontoon boats. I'm not sure what. This is what I'm hearing, okay, folks. I am not an expert in military equipment, okay. This is just what I'm hearing. But what you see today, or 2 days ago, military echelon film today in Crimea. Train load after train load after train load of tanks and military equipment being carried into Crimea. I'll keep looking here, and I also learned that Ukrainian military has been laying mines in the Donetsk region, I guess to try to stop invasion of Russian forces in that region. Big military convoy at Morozovsk, Rostov region towards Kamensk, Shetinsky on the border with Ukraine. Here we have U.S. officials call buildup of Russian forces near Ukraine border concerning. Head of Ukraine delegation at Minsk contact group. I guess this was the Minsk agreement. The ceasefire from the Minsk agreement expired last night. Russians refused to guarantee full ceasefire regime starting midnight April the 1st. U.S. top officer General Mark Milley spoke by phone with Russia's foreign minister following the buildup of Russian forces on the border with Ukraine. In this little video, you have a child asking his dad, will there be a war again? Well, what else is a child supposed to think? What other conclusion can he come up with when he sees this? This is a very strange statement. Head of Russian delegation, Grislov, says that the fact that Ukraine insisting on full ceasefire shows that Ukraine is unable to be committed to full ceasefire. Well, that's interesting speech. MFA of Ukraine. I held a productive and focused call with Secretary Blinken as Russia continues to systematically aggravate the security situation in the east of Ukraine and in Crimea, discussed ways to strengthen security cooperation. Let me remind you, that Ukraine is not a member of the EU. The Ukraine is not a member of NATO. Now, I guess this is supposed to be a joke here. I'm not sure what they were thinking when they, maybe they're mocking the Russians when the trailer went over the side of the bridge. Russian engineers at floating bridges spotted on a small road that leads to the occupied Lugansk region in Ukraine. Now here is a statement from Secretary Anthony Blinken. Pleased to speak with, I guess, the Minister of Foreign Affairs in Ukraine today to discuss the United States' unwavering support for Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Why is everybody asking for a fight right now? Why? We continue to support Ukraine's Euro-Atlantic integration. There is no Euro-Atlantic integration of Ukraine in the works. This is pretending. This is Secretary of State acting as if Ukraine is a member of NATO. Ukraine is not a member of NATO. But see, folks, you got to understand, from my perspective, I am looking at this from a prophetic standpoint, not from a whether West is right or wrong, or the East is right or wrong, or concerning Russia. Okay. But you can see by the language here from the Secretary of State that he is treating Ukraine as if they are a member of NATO. This is very, very dangerous. Military convoy with painted over signs filmed in Logoshin, Belarus. I wonder what that's all about. Well, you know which way they're headed. They're headed west. To the border. To block any invasion by NATO forces from Poland. Five hours ago, as Russia is pulling troops to the border with Ukraine, the armed forces of Ukraine are preparing to call reservists. Russia suspends traffic on Crimea Bridge for a drill. Yeah, right. You know why they're suspending traffic on the Crimea Bridge? They've got it loaded with military equipment. Now, according to Google Maps, traffic just a little jammed due to this. I wonder if this is the Crimea Bridge. I can't tell. I can't see. It looks like it. My eyes are not so good, but it's obvious what's going on here, folks. All right, take a look at this. Kremlin comments on military buildup on the border with Ukraine in short. Ukrainian military movements inside Ukraine are clear provocation, threatening everyone. Russia military movements are purely internal matter of Russia, are completely peaceful, not threatening anyone. Head of Ukraine's delegation at Minsk Contact Group, Kravchuk, Russians refuse to guarantee full ceasefire regime starting midnight April the 1st. And you've seen that before. And folks, I'm sure you can do the math. You know what's about to happen, don't you? Nordstream 2 announces increased activity of foreign warships in the pipeline construction zone. The actions of foreign vessels in the construction of a zone of Nord Stream 2 are provocative and could damage the pipeline, the company noted. Now, folks, I need to explain something to you about this. 36% of Russia's gross domestic product comes from their oil and gas exports. Almost all of the pipelines run through, guess where? Ukraine. And also the Black Sea, I think. All right, I think I'm caught up. And you can see where I'm getting this information. You can do your Twitter search yourself and look and keep up with what's going on if you want to. Now, I want to show you something. You see that? This is Vietnamese news. You'll never find this on mainstream media in the United States, and it's a shame. So let me click the Google Translate. Let's hit English. What is the cause for all of this? March 31st. Ukraine's Army Chief of Staff announced that the country's armed forces will begin a full-scale offensive to destroy separatist rebels in Donbass. Now, when I first saw this particular statement, it was said that it would begin on May the 2nd. So I guess Russia says, hey, why not now? Now, do you know what time it is, folks? Well, this is one. Hey, look at this. This is an article. Promises made, promises broken. What Yeltsin was told about NATO in 1993 and why it matters. You can read this. I'll read a little bit of it, but I want to get back to my original thought here. Surely the Kremlin watched with no small amount of bitterness last Friday as NATO's heads of state and government gathered for dinner at Warsaw's presidential palace, the same building in which the Warsaw Pact, which formed the basis of the Soviet-led Cold War military alliance, was signed in 1955. The larger occasion was the NATO summit, which was hosted for the fourth time by either a former Soviet satellite state or republic. The incorporation of the Eastern European states into the alliance has been the source of tensions between Russia and the West since before the first round of NATO enlargement was announced in 1997. Today, Russia and the West, at odds over Ukraine and Syria, are engaged in significant military posturing in Europe, not seen since the Cold War. As such, There's never been a more important time to review the terms of the Cold War settlement in Europe, especially as it pertains to NATO, to understand the roots in the current standoff. More than a quarter century ago, in February 1990, U.S. Secretary of State James Baker and Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev, that was the name that I was trying to think of, discussed NATO's future role in a unified Germany. Baker told Gorbachev that there would be no extension of NATO's jurisdictions for forces of NATO 1 inch to the east, and agreed with Gorbachev's statement that any extension of the zone of NATO is unacceptable. Conversation over. Right? Wrong. Gorbachev himself has acknowledged that their meetings were an early discussion in what became negotiations over the terms of the German unification rather than a broader conversation about NATO's future role in Europe. Understanding the twists and turns of these negotiations is crucial to understanding today's contested narratives. So you see why we have the situation here today? Now, getting back to asking the question, why now? Have you bothered to look at the dates and times which we live in? So, as I in previous videos pointed out, that at Passover, the Roman general Titus began the siege of Jerusalem. Okay? He took advantage of the fact that many Jews from all around Judea were coming to Jerusalem for Passover. Passover, the day celebrated for when the firstborn of Egypt were killed. The plague that would cause Pharaoh to finally let Israel go. That is the time when Titus decided to begin his siege of Jerusalem. This was not by happenstance, this was planned. And since Jehovah is a jealous and vengeful Elohim, he remembers this. I'm not saying anything is going to start on Roman Easter. I'm just saying, just be aware of the times in which we live in right now. Watch dates. Be aware. Have your eyes open. We're coming upon the Roman Easter. Think about the parallel. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I do not know what's going to happen on Roman Easter any more than you do. Okay? I'm just saying, keep your eyes and your ears open and be ready to connect the dots. That's all I'm saying. Did you think that nothing was going to happen after the peace plan of the century morphed into the Abraham Accords? Did you think nothing was going to happen? After what Paul said in 1 Thessalonians 5 verse 3, did you think nothing was going to happen after that? Well, I didn't know what was going to happen. I suspected something might happen. But when you have the United States treating Ukraine as if it is a member of NATO, do you realize how close to nuclear war this world is getting into? Do you have any idea? And as I pointed out in a couple of, what was the last video, the video beforehand, I can't be sure if a nuclear war is going to happen just before the day of Jehovah's wrath or after. Because if we go and look, here's what I'm saying. I want to show you something, folks. This is why we have to keep an open mind to the truth. Don't get narratives, don't let narratives get caught in your head and not allow you to see the truth when it's presented to you in a way you haven't thought of before. What is it? Revelation. I've got to think about this for a minute. Oh. The sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates. Is there a war happening near the great river Euphrates? Yes. Okay. Oh yeah. And the water there was dried up. Has the water dried up? Well, it's drying up. I've shown you that in videos months ago. How dry does it need to be? And how wasted away does it need to be? Is it complete? Or is it just withered? Well, it's withered, folks. Right now. We don't know how much that is required to fulfill this prophecy. That the way of the king of Anatolia might be prepared. Well, I pointed out to you a few months ago during the Trump administration that they indeed did cross into the other side of the Euphrates River for a while. I'm not saying this is, or I'm not saying it isn't. What I'm saying is, do not get a narrative stuck in your head so that you cannot see the truth when it's in front of you. And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet, for they are spirits of devils, working miracles, working wonders, as we saw lying wonders according to Paul, which will go forth unto the kings of the earth and the whole world to gather them to the battle of the great day of Jehovah Almighty. So it says, behold, I come as a thief. And this is the reason why, folks, do you know whether, if you go and look at the 6th seal, this is the 6th vial. If you look at the 6th seal, it says, hide us from the face of him that sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. Why would they say that? If they're hiding from him, that means they've showed up. They're here. Then it says right here concerning the 6th bowl of wrath, behold, I come as a thief. Blessed is he that washes and keeps his garments, lest he walk naked and they see his shame. Why would there be a need to insert that if he already showed up at the 6th seal, unless, of course, the 6th seal, the 6th trumpet, and the 6th vial are the same? Do we know? No, we don't. That's why I say, again, do not let a narrative get stuck in your head so that you are not able to see the truth when it hits you. Now, I'm not even sure. Okay. And he gathered them to a place in the Hebrew tongue called Armageddon. But now, this was not the one that I was looking for. I was looking for the sixth trumpet sound. But watch this. Oh, that's the sixth bowl of wrath. Why is it? All right, let's try it again. Sounded. There we go. The sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar, which is before Jehovah, saying to the sixth angel which had the trumpet, loose the four angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates. Here we talk about the great river Euphrates again. Why? And the angels were loosed, which were prepared for 1 hour, 1 day, 1 month, and a year, for to slay the third part of men. And as I have pointed out, what war? What war have you ever seen or heard of that took 1 hour, 1 day, 1 month, and a year, that killed a third part of men that was not nuclear? And I saw the horses in the vision, and them that sat on them, having breastplates of fire, and jacinths and brimstone, and the heads of the horses were like heads of lions. So clearly they were not horses as we know it, but they did the work of horses because they had heads of lions. And as I pointed out, if you go and look at mobile missile launchers, let's have a look. Mobile ICBM launcher. Now, they all look a bit different from each other, so it's hard to tell what John was seeing. But what I'm saying is there a possibility? Now let's look at the head of a lion. Okay, this is a perfect example. Head of a lion. The head of a lion is nice and broad, nice and wide, isn't it? Well, a horse's head is not. Right? Now, let's look at I wish I could see one of these straight ahead. Just like we see the lion. Wouldn't that be great? Can I see one? So he has a broad head. I can't find one that looks straight ahead. Well, that is very unfortunate. Where is it? I think you get the gist, folks. This is probably as close to, oh, there we go. There's one that looks straight ahead. All right? All right, it's nice and wide and broad, is it not? All right? So clearly he's talking about how broad and wide the head is. And out of their mouth issued fire, smoke, and brimstone. And by these three were the third part of men killed, by the fire, by the smoke. Wait a minute. Hold on just a minute now. I just thought of something. By the fire, by the smoke, and by the brimstone. How are a third of people going to be killed by these three things? By the fire, by the smoke, and by the brimstone. Do you know what the smoke of a nuclear explosion is? It is nuclear fallout. Yep. Does that get your attention yet? Which issued out of their mouth. But wait a minute, hold on. That's coming out of their face, out of their front, right? Let's look at this picture again. What do we have sitting right here? Isn't it a mobile? Isn't it an ICBM? Isn't that what that is? Right above its head? A mouth is on a head, right? Right. Now, I don't want to get too far away from that smoke statement by Yohannan. So he continues, he says, because the power is in their mouth and in their tail. What do you mean the power is in their mouth and in their tail? Well, if you look at this ICBM launcher, at first it appears this right here is right there at the head, therefore at the mouth. You see? Looks like it's in its mouth. But when it's raised up, it looks as if it's his tail. See if I can find one standing up. Right here. Suddenly it looks like a tail, doesn't it? Yes, it does. What other conclusion can you come to, folks? Fire, brimstone, and the smoke kills 1/3 of men. What other conclusion can you come to? And then when you read the rest of it, and it says, and the rest of these, which were not killed by these plagues, refused to repent of the works of their hand, that they should not worship devils, idols of gold and silver and brass and stone and of wood, which neither can see nor hear nor walk, neither did they repent of their murders, nor their sorceries, nor fornications, nor their thefts. In other words, even after this horrific event occurs, they still refused. People still refused to stop their idolatry, their murders, their sorceries, their fornications, and their thefts. And you know what happens next? The seventh trumpet sounds. So, gotta find the seventh trumpet. All right. I think this might be the seventh trumpet. Yes. So, the seventh trumpet is about to sound or has sounded. I'm not sure. Because if you go look back, I might have to go seventh angel sounded. Okay. So, here we go. Now, So after the witnesses finish their testimony, a great earthquake happens, right? Then the seventh angel sounded. There are great voices in heaven saying, the kingdom of this world are become the kingdom of our Elohim, and of his Moshiach, not Christos, and he shall reign forever and ever. And the 24 elders which sat before Jehovah on their seats fell on their faces and worshipped Jehovah, saying, we give you thanks, O Jehovah Elohim Almighty, which were, or which are, and which was, and is to come, because you have taken to you your great power, and you now are in command. You are now in charge. And the time has come. Oh, and the nations were angry. All right? Let's go to Strong's Concordance, and we're going to see this is going to make the Gentiles angry when I do this. But I am seeking to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And hopefully I will have accomplished this before my own death. And the Gentiles were angry. And your wrath is come, and the time of the dead, that they should be judged, and that you should give reward unto your servants the prophets, to the Kodesh the Jews, and them who fear your name, small and great. Who, what is his name? Jehovah. If you fear his name, and you refuse to replace it with any other name, recognizing that that name is one, and is the only one, then you will be remembered. You will be on this list. Reward your servants the prophets, the Kodesh, that's the Jews, and them that fear your name, no matter how small you are. No matter what an insignificant human being you are, if you fear his name and refuse to put any other name in place of that name or over his name, then you are in this list right here. So reward to all of them, even the smallest one. And then should destroy them which destroyed the Eretz. Who destroyed the Eretz? Rome and their legions. And the temple of Jehovah was opened in heaven, and there was seen in his temple the ark of the covenant. And there were lightnings and voices and thunderings and an earthquake and great hail. Now you see, the ark of the covenant might not exist on earth today, but it exists on Jehovah's throne in heaven. And he's remembered this new covenant that he promised to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and to Israel in Jeremiah 31, verses 31 through 34. So folks, what I'm saying is, there is a nuclear war coming. And the reason why I can make this claim is because of what is written in Zechariah 14. And also what is written in book of Revelation. And to the Jews out there, to the Jews, also, the prophets point to a nuclear war And it shall come to pass, verse 13, in that day that a great tumult from Jehovah shall be among them. And they're going to lay hold every one on the hand of his neighbor, and his hand shall rise up against the hand of his neighbor. All right. And Yehuda will take Jerusalem, and the wealth of all the Gentiles round about shall be gathered together, gold, silver, and apparel in great abundance. And it shall be the plague of the horse, and of the mule, and of the camel, and of the donkey, and of all the beasts that shall be in these tents, all be affected. But what kind of a plague is this? This shall be the plague wherewith Jehovah will smite all the people who fought against Jerusalem. In the last days, we just read that it is a plague self-inflicted. Self-inflicted plague. We've read that in the book of Revelation, and now we read it now. Their flesh shall consume away while they stand upon their feet, just like the flesh consumed away while they were standing on their feet in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And their eyes shall consume away in their holes, just like their eyes consumed away in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And their tongue shall consume away in their mouth, just like their tongues consumed away in their mouth in the days of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And it shall come to pass in that day. And that explains why this is happening. This great tumult from Jehovah will be among them. They're going to start firing everything that they have against each other. Is that day here? I do not know the answer. But I will say this. If you start seeing nuclear missiles flying from city to city as a result of this ridiculous and foolish conflict that NATO has gotten themselves in with Russia, do not be surprised if that is the day that the prophets speak of and that Yehoshua and Yohannan spoke of. Do not be surprised. I warn you again. Do not take your own narrative as gospel truth, so that you are not able to open your eyes and open your mind to the truth when the truth actually comes to you. All of Christianity has made that foolish mistake. And that foolish mistake is going to cause them to believe that Israel's Moshiach is their Antichrist. You need to think long and hard about it. You've been warned.